when I get to talk to people about why I'm not actually in radio anymore, the big issue comes into the markets, the way the actual business is working. The business of broadcasting is dying, as people watching this video here getting their news know all too well. The fact that I am here and giving people credible news and people are getting it from me and not from other places is part of the issue. But the greater issue of that is the people in charge, from private equity buying them up and breaking them down to the people actually running the shows, not doing a great job. I say I'm not in radio directly from a big boss, say a corporate vice president who came in, changed a bunch of stuff, made things really, really worse, and then was part of the reason why I was let go. And let many people let go. And many people with talent, more talented than I, and many people with the ability to get things done, not being there makes life harder for everyone. Let's go to the actual point of this video, and it's Donald Trump as an existential crisis on him having the job, having the basic qualifications of basically breathing and living, but the things he's actually doing, not doing any of us very good. One in particular, really bad one, is the big, beautiful bill, which has passed the Senate and now is back in the House to be reconciled with the changes and to be put into law. If all things go well, Trump will sign it at a parade on the 4th of July because it's the optics. But the bigger issue is not so much the big, beautiful bill, which I'll complain about inside this video. It's what he's doing to make sure it gets done. He is threatening to support primary challenges against House and Senate Republicans who are voting against the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. This sweeping budget tax and spending package, of course, he's been championing for a while, and he signaled out Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, the Republican, as his poster child, as his prototype. Tillis openly opposed the deep Medicaid cuts, talking about how what it would do would be terrible for his constituents and many others like his, particularly rural people who need these hospitals and need the Medicaid to pay for it for people who don't have the coverage or the ability to pay as if they were large earners someplace else. He spoke out very loud, very proud, if you will, on this one, after he, of course, announced he wasn't running for re-election anyway. So an idea that was already in his mind to come up to decision in August. He just moved that the timetable up much quicker because he believed this thing was more important to talk about right now. He's not the only one that did not vote for that one. We'll get to that in a bit. But this is a whole process that Donald Trump was putting out on Truth Social and putting out in the media in little bits and pieces that Thom Tillis's days in North Carolina may be numbered because whoever wants to run against him as a Republican may get his push. So that's happening. The legislation itself is terrible. It's an extension of Trump's tax cuts from the previous administration, ones that needed time to expire. We're going to expire now. We're going to push them one more time. Essentially, Trump thought he was going to be in 2 terms, so he set them for an 8-year timeline to go with it. They would have been extended in his second term, definitely. But along with extending that one, he has a chance to actually raise some defense and immigration enforcement spent funding, because immigration is a big thing here, and to pay for some of these things, to balance it out, if you will. Medicaid and other entitlements are being cut. You're taking stuff from people who don't have the money that it gives them the money to fund other things. Opponents of the bill have warned up to $3.3 to $5 trillion national debt over the decade, spending for this stuff right now, and of course, healthcare and food assistance gone immediately, and having to rebuild that in some cases. Having many people having to rely on food banks, which isn't necessarily a problem, but people who are getting things as an assistance from the government now have to go out to do this thing automatically. And the food banks having to not just take care of people who are in dire shape, but everyone becomes an issue. So the rift in the Republican Party is there's always someone who wants more power back and forth in the party. But Thom Tillis is just one person that showed this, and one person who had to stare down the wrath of Donald Trump, and we'll see what happens in the House in a moment. But Rand Paul, who also voted against this bill and also spoke against it, voted against the pushing forward of it as well, said words has not been pushed for a primary yet. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, those are 2 other members who are independent-minded, but they, of course, looked at the numbers, saw what it could do, and essentially pushed for it, despite the fact they say they want to be strong in their opposition to just all Trump all the time. And so far, they seem to be pushing over. Other House conservatives have voiced concerns about what's happening, the rushed process, fiscal impact, and Medicaid cuts itself. But no one is really stepping up to have a revolt. saying this is not working and come up with something that's going to actually work, the president may, in his right mind say, okay, this is close enough, let's sign it. Oh, by the way, Elon Musk, who's being seen as a high-profile conservative voice, which I'm not sure the robot editor understood that one, is actually back on the scene again, back in the bad graces of Donald Trump. And now, because he opposes the bill, says he may pay up some money to help out other folks who went to primary against people who voted for it. Now, he called the bill financial suicide with all the talk about the whole deficit stuff. And he's not that happy about it because inside some of the payments for maintaining oil and gas standards are cuts to new energy things. So his electric cars are new energy. So there's cuts to the subsidies that help him. Like literally, he's a billionaire because the government pays for him to be a billionaire. Also cuts to wind and solar and things like that. Things he doesn't care as much about, but his electric cars, he does. On the House and the Senate sides, the Democrats unanimously opposed the legislation, which made it really, really hard to pass, except for the majorities in the House and the Senate, so they can basically make sure that more people vote for it than not. For the Senate to actually approve the bill to move back to the House, it was a 51-50 vote. 51 means Vice President J.D. Vance showed up for work and put in a tie-breaking vote. But it's back to the House where they have to actually re-reconcile it because they changed it to what they want it to be coming out of the House significantly. And you have to make sure that what's there. There are plenty of folks in the House that complain just as much about the cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to Medicare and the cuts to food subsidies and what's happening there, and things go back and forth. So now, with 2 days to the 4th of July deadline, which was put on by Donald Trump, we have to see whether the GOP will come together like Voltron and sign this thing and get it happening, or whether they will come to their senses and see what they have as a problem and face the problem as it is. We know Trump's influence is going to enforce party unity. We're pretty sure it's going to happen. This thing is going to be signed some way or not. And if they don't get it signed, or enough people yell about it, Trump will find a way to make lives harder for people who are saying what they believe. This is not a good bill. The problem is, this is not a good bill. And no, I did not read all 989 pages of it. I didn't watch all 16 hours of coverage on C-SPAN as they read it aloud. So yes, I am not a deep lover of reading very long bills and don't know all the intricate details of what's going on. But from what I've read, pieces I've gotten into, from analysis I've seen from both sides, and the way they explain it, people who are trying to grift you try to quickly explain things away and don't really go into the actual details on hearing your concerns and saying why there may be issues, but the outset will be better. Basically, just like Trump says, we'll make so much money on these tariffs that it will hurt a little bit in the front end. We'll make so much in progress in the states with the tax cuts that'll hurt a little bit in the front end, but it never works that way.